February 1st, Jarret and I embarked on our first site trip together to Haiti. We had a layover in Miami where we visited the Little Haiti Cultural Complex and learned about the history of Haitian flags. The flight was stunning as we got closer. Who knew Haiti was so mountainous? Early the next morning, we made our way to Petit Goave, or Tigouave as the locals call it, which means small bay. We took a charter plane, which, despite having been on probably 1,000 flights, are not my favorite. But it was a super smooth ride with absolutely gorgeous views. The crystal clear blue-green waters, the textured mountains, the snaky rivers. I honestly had no idea Haiti was so beautiful and was in awe the entire flight. From there, we drove about 2 hours to Tigouave, seeing loads of big and small villages along the way, some of which were super colorful. We also learned about tap-taps, which are basically little taxis that you get to tap to get on and off. They were all decorated really uniquely. Then came the really exciting stuff, seeing teams work on the ground. At the beginning of the school year, TEEM provided $20,000 to Haiti Community Trust and the Association Paysan Valley, APV, or the Association for the People of Valou, to help launch a program called the Youth Agribio Competition in a village called Valou. The purpose of this program is twofold. It starts by encouraging young people to develop sustainable, client-smart food gardens. The teams then create a business plan to turn the gardens into profitable businesses. In doing so, the young people will generate a steady and desirable source of sustainable income in their communities, which allows them to kickstart the local economy in their own villages rather than moving away, a current reality that is hurting the country. Out of nearly 100 applicants, 25 were selected to have their teams of 5 partake in the competition. These young teams had been working for months on their gardens and business plans, having conducted interviews and weekly check-ins with judges, agronomists, and directors. One of the best days of our visit was partaking in the celebration of these teams and the announcement of the top 3 winners. We heard from each team about what they learned throughout the process and how they hope to use the funds to make a major difference in their lives and the lives of those in their community. It was really tremendous being part of this inaugural initiative. We can't wait to follow up with the teams to see how their businesses are going. As we get more schools to join our Haiti pod, the more funding and support these students and young entrepreneurs will have access to. Our hope is to emulate this agribio competition in multiple villages around Haiti, which will allow more and more young Haitians to kickstart their local economy as they explore the sustainable beauty of their land while becoming successful entrepreneurs. So a big cheers to Gerda, Abner, Yvonne, the participants of the agribio competition, and the entire ACT and APV team for making our first trip to Haiti and our first ever team site trip together a beautiful success. 2 weeks later, we made our way to Africa. While Jarret has been there numerous times, this was my first time visiting, and I was very excited to step foot on a new continent. After about 14 hours of travel, we safely arrived in Burkina Faso, where we were greeted by Georgie and her cousin. We drove to the hotel to wash up, then explored a little bit of Ouagadougou, the capital. The next day was busy, but wow, what an experience. Since it was a Sunday morning, most people were at church, but we met the chiefs of each village as well as some local men, women, and children. We discussed, through translation, the impacts the wells have had on their communities. The women shared that they used to walk 3 miles to fetch water for their families on a daily basis, but now it's exponentially more accessible, which allows them to do other things. It was remarkable learning how women have gone from such treacherous treks to obtain water to becoming trained engineers in fixing wells. At each village, we were presented with many gifts by the chiefs and female engineers, which we humbly accepted. These gifts, which included beautiful hats, scarves, purses, and even live chickens, were symbols of gratitude for our support in helping provide them with access to fresh water. It was beautiful, almost ceremonious, and clearly put some big smiles on our faces. We then made our way to a village called Tangandasuri, where we were greeted with a welcome dance by the local women. It was vibrant. Afterwards, we attended a mini conference of sorts, where we met the 178 women who have been trained or are in the process of being trained for well engineering. These women range from ages early 20s to late 60s. We met local town hall representatives to hear the progress being made. It was inspiring hearing directly from these women how the programs we support have made a huge difference in their lives and the lives of their communities. Afterwards, we visited the 2 GBF oases. The first one we saw was funded by TEEM, so that was obviously really exciting. It's currently under construction, but was still really awesome to see. It was such a great feeling being able to physically see the work that TEEM and our students have been able to help make happen in Burkina Faso. Then we saw GBF's first complete oasis. In addition to the solar-powered well, there were running bathrooms, water spigots, cell phone chargers, overhead lights, and a community garden. One of the parts that stuck out to me was when Georgie said that since there's no electricity, students aren't able to study at night, but these overhead lights would make that possible. Something so simple makes such an enormous difference. These oases reach hundreds, if not thousands, of people in the surrounding villages. It's amazing to see the innovation GBF dove into and how their team is making these visions come to life. Our final day there, we went to GBF headquarters in Ouagadougou, where we walked around the office and met the entire GBF team. Despite the language barrier, we all went to lunch together, learned about one another, and had a great time. The Burkinabe are such kind, gentle, hospitable people, and we were so grateful for their willingness to show us around the villages. Jarret and I had such a great time at Burkina Faso, and while it was our first trip there together, I know it won't be our last. The next morning, we had an early flight to Ethiopia. We took 2 flights, then drove an hour as we set out for Danan, a town located in the Somali region of southeastern Ethiopia. Upon arriving, we were welcomed to the Oda Danan Project compound where we would be staying for the next few days. Jarret wasn't kidding when he said we would be sleeping in the desert. We were welcomed with handshakes, hugs, and smiles, and though Dick Young had last-minute flight issues and was unfortunately unable to join us, they sure were ready to celebrate his arrival. While Danan is the name of the town, it's also an adjective meaning bitter in the Somali language. But the town doesn't solely convey bitterness. Yes, there are very harsh living conditions, which is why TEEM has partnered to help. However, there is certainly some sweet that converges in the community as well, and that is through the Danan Health Center. We met with the entire medical staff, the doctors, nurses, and patient educators, and made our rounds with the doctors and nurses. In many ways, it was a difficult experience as we met patients young and old suffering from a variety of ailments. We learned that while many of these illnesses, such as malaria, tuberculosis, gastrointestinal issues, and diarrhea, are pretty uncommon and preventable where we live, they are life-threatening in Danan. But seeing the often pained expressions of the people lying in the hospital beds there brought to light the harsh reality of living in this area of the Somali region. However, we could also see a certain fortitude, even a certain oblique sweetness that helps counterbalance the bitterness of the area. And over the course of the 19 years that the Danan Project has been established, they have made massive strides in providing medical care and facilities to the people of the region. As you may know, TEEM supports 2 projects in Danan, the Medical Center and Small Business Microloans. So later that afternoon, when we got back from the Medical Center, we met with the men and women who have started small businesses through the microloan program. Many of these groups focus on agricultural businesses, while others clothing. With these microloans being 0% interest and the small businesses being successful, the demand has become higher and higher. We hope to continue adding more support to their ambitions each year. The next day, we drove about an hour further into the desert to see a sight like one we've never seen before. It was a camel party. Clearly, encountering a new species was a little scary, but we acclimated quickly. We met the keepers of the camels and watched young kids fill buckets of water from a deep well several times a minute to keep the camels hydrated. Something I'll never forget about being in Ethiopia was the sky. With the undisrupted views of the horizon, the sunrises and sunsets were simply stunning. The night stars even more so, with thousands of them visible to the naked eye. You certainly don't get that kind of evening ambiance in New Jersey. After our 2 nights in Danan, we headed back to Addis Ababa, where we explored more of the capital and learned about its unique history. Then we made our way to the airport around midnight to head back home. To say we had an eventful February would be an understatement. It was tremendous being able to see all the work TEEM and its schools support on the ground. Our goal is to visit every site in the near future and begin taking students and teachers on our journeys as well. Now that you've gotten a glimpse into the impact TEEM makes, you can see why we're always so grateful for the support we get. So once again, thank you to everyone who has contributed to TEEM's mission of making the world a better, kinder, more equitable place.